This edition of MacVoices is brought to you by Opsgenie by Atlassian. With Opsgenie, your next incident doesn't stand a chance. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, one thing we never seem to talk about enough, even though we all get tired of talking about it, is passwords. And that's why Joe Kissell is back to talk about the newest edition of his Take Control book, Take Control of 1Password. Joe, welcome. It's good to see you as always.
Hello, good to be here.
Joe, didn't we just do this not so long ago for this particular book?
We did. And, you know, if the software companies of the world would just stop updating their stuff, they've just let them be and never change them, then I wouldn't have to update my books so often. Normally in my industry, we assume there, even though we're writing about books about technology, and even though technology changes, we generally assume we can get a good solid year out of an edition before it goes just utterly out of sync with reality. But that was not the case with this particular book. We released Take Control of 1Password, third edition, just in January. It's now, well, depending on when, end of October, early November. Anyway, not that long has gone by since we updated this book the last time. And this is the sort of thing where we didn't just need a minor update. So much has changed that we had to do a gigantic, a really, really major revision of this book. So it's now up to the fourth edition. That's two big editions in less than a year. But that reflects the state of this area. I mean, it reflects not only the development of this particular app, 1Password, but it also reflects things that Apple is doing and things that the industry is doing. So things are going on in the world of passwords, and this particular update is honestly way overdue. We could have released it, 3 or 4 months ago. That was the point at which it was already very badly needed. But as we will probably discuss in a few minutes, it was a good thing that it got delayed, because things have changed even in the last couple of weeks that I have needed to document. So things are moving.
I'm with you on the software updates, but this is one area that I don't want them to wait for a full year or even part of a year. Because the bad guys are out there. They seem to be finding new ways in. Just before we started this interview, I got another one of those calls. Please don't hang up. This is not a sales call. Of course, it's a sales call.
It's a phishing call, not a sales call. I'm trying to spam you. That's totally different from trying to sell you something.
Yeah, exactly. And that's that is obvious. But sometimes some of the things that happen online with our passwords, with our security, are not nearly so obvious, and they're so much more subtle and so much harder to detect. And so this is an area that I want to keep up on as much as I can. I'm delighted that the folks at 1Password are doing that for me, but it also means that I have to try to keep up with them as to what they're doing to protect me. And now I've got to keep up with you trying to help me understand what they're doing to protect me. So what are they doing to protect me, Joe? Help me out here.
Well, so there are these things called passwords.
No, let's not get that basic.
So, where to even begin? Well, I'll tell you where we're going to begin, because you mentioned that there have been sort of ever sneakier and more prevalent attempts to discover your passwords and to trick you into giving them away, and lots and lots of security breaches. I mean, they've become just so, it used to be like, oh, you're kidding, Google or Facebook or whoever has leaked how many millions of passwords, and this was like a huge news story, everybody up in arms. Nowadays, it happens so often that millions of accounts are compromised that we almost don't notice it anymore. But it's a big deal. And so 1Password is taking some steps keep your passwords safer. Now, for a long time, I mean, a few years, there has been this feature that they called Watchtower. This actually started back with the Heartbleed SSL bug, and I won't rehash the details. But anyway, a few years ago, there was this SSL bug that meant that under the right circumstances, almost any site that you connected to using SSL, which of course you always should because that's supposed to be secure and encrypted, there was a way due to an implementation bug that credentials could leak out. And it was a big uproar in the industry, and everything had to be updated in a hurry. And so 1Password added this feature to the app. AgileBits added the feature to 1Password. It basically said, okay, we have a list of all the sites that might have been affected by this. And if we notice that you have a password for one of these sites and you haven't updated that password since this bug was identified, we're going to say, hey, you might want to go ahead and update that password. And then as time went on, they added to this list. It wasn't just the sites affected by that particular bug. Anytime there was another publicized security breach, oh, well, Facebook had this happen or Dropbox had this happen or whatever, they would add that site to their list. And then if you happened to have a password for that site that hadn't been updated since the security breach was identified, 1Password would say, you might want to change that password. So that's a really good thing. 1Password's been doing this for a few years, and they've been expanding their list of sites that they identify, and a number of other password managers, very much to their credit, have done the same thing. Also, for quite some time, 1Password has had a view where it could show you passwords that are just too short or too simple, or they don't not just not strong enough for one reason or another, or passwords that you have reused on multiple sites. So all those are bad things you shouldn't do. You should have strong passwords. They should all be unique. So 1Password help you to identify those. Well, in this latest version, we're at, depending on your platform, 7.1 or 7.2-ish now. 1Password has taken that label, Watchtower, and they've expanded it to mean much more than it used to mean. So Watchtower now covers, I want to say, 7 different categories of security auditing. So these are 7 different respects in which your passwords could potentially be vulnerable, up from a few. And instead of using Watchtower to refer to just that one specific thing, now it's being used to refer to this entire category of stuff. So yes, the compromised logins, that's still a thing. There are also the existing categories of reused passwords and weak passwords. Those also still exist, and a few things are getting added to this list. So one of the things is a category of vulnerable passwords. So basically, there's a site called haveibeenpwned.com that does a different kind of a thing than those compromised logins I was just talking about. It actually when like millions of passwords leak out into the wild, this site catalogs them, and you can look up password and see if it's on their list. So that doesn't necessarily mean that it's compromised, but it means that somebody with that uses that particular password, whether it's you or not, that password is out there. So 1Password now has a very clever way of connecting to this in such a way that it's not actually sending your passwords anywhere. Basically, it computes an encrypted hash of those passwords and your passwords, and then it takes just the first several characters of that hash and looks for matches. So What this means is that there could be some false positives. It might say, oh, we think that this password has been leaked in one of these lists, and there's a chance that it hasn't really, but that just there was enough of a match in those partial few characters that it matched. But still, better safe than sorry. And I'm sort of yada-yadaing details. It's more complex and more secure than what I just made it sound like. But anyway, the point is, if a password that you use is in a list of compromised passwords someplace, you can now be alerted to this fact. 1Password can also tell you if a site offers two-factor authentication, but you haven't turned it on. So you should always use two-factor authentication when it is available, and more and more sites are offering it now. And of course, 1Password has this built-in one-time password generator, those 6-digit codes that you see everywhere. So instead of having to use a different app to generate those, you can get them right in 1Password. It's very handy. So it shows you those. It also shows you sites you have saved that the URL starts with HTTP and not HTTPS. So of course you need that encryption, the HTTPS for TLS or SSL when you're logging into a site to make sure that your communication between your device and the site is encrypted. Now it could just mean that the site has switched to HTTPS, but it didn't use that when you stored your password way back when, and all you need to do is go in there and edit it and add the S. But it's still a good thing to be aware of, because one thing you definitely don't want to do is to be sending your passwords to other sites in plain text. That's a really bad thing. And so this alerts you that it's just something you might want to check on, and either edit your login if necessary, or contact the site and say, it's 2018, guys, why are you not encrypting your site? And then last but not least, there's a new Watchtower category called expiring. This is not for passwords. This is for things like driver's licenses and credit cards and passports and things that identify you that might have an expiration date to alert you that they either have expired or are about to expire. So it's really great that 1Password has expanded this list of things that you might want to that could possibly be a danger to you, even though you have a password and it's a unique password and it's a strong password and it's stored in 1Password. That's great. Even so, it could be at risk, and so 1Password's taking really outstanding steps to bring those sorts of things to your attention now.
When you and I first started talking about passwords, all we had to do was worry about our own passwords, and what was here. And that, I think we sort of overlooked at the time the fact that somebody else has your passwords too. And now in a world of data breaches, a lot of other people may have the password because your password may have been breached and shared on the dark web and who knows where else. Yeah. And so I like the idea that 1Password is sort of now trying to take care of both sides of the equation.
Yeah, and this is very much a better safe than sorry kind of thing, because 1Password has a random password generator, and it's conceivable that somebody else generated that same random password for something else completely. And so the fact that password shows up in a list somewhere doesn't necessarily signal danger, but you can't be too careful with these things. And
it doesn't cost anything. I mean, that's right. The other thing here.
That's right.
If it shows up, change it. It doesn't cost you a thing.
Yeah, there is at least one password manager that will remain nameless that charges extra for that feature of dark web monitoring, and okay, that's a business model, but I think it's important enough that you shouldn't have to pay extra for it.
It's probably important to note here that 1Password has gone with a subscription model. And this is kind of why, they need to be doing these updates. They need to be doing these upgrades, and they need to be paid to do them.
Right. So I think we talked back in January, February about this subscription model, and it annoyed some people, and I understand. I mean, a lot of different apps are moving from a straight one-time license fee to a subscription model, and I understand that it can feel burdensome to have to pay every year or every month, depending on how it's set up, for so many different apps. But in this particular case, first of all, I mean, it has actually become more economical to buy a subscription than to keep paying for upgrades every year. But also, they are actually doing a lot of ongoing work. You're not just paying for their syncing service. I mean, that's a thing that's part of it, that's optional, that you can use, but you are paying for a lot of ongoing development. You're paying for tech support. You're paying for a lot of stuff that does cost money, and I really can't complain. They're an individual subscription to 1Password is $36 a year. It's $3 a month, and for the utility I get from that, I cannot complain at all.
I'm happy to welcome Opsgenie by Atlassian as a sponsor of MacVoices this week. It's easy for your company to look good when things are going right. It's when things go wrong that really great companies shine. And trust me, sooner or later, things are going to go wrong. How your company looks when an incident occurs depends on what you do before it happens. That's where Opsgenie by Atlassian comes in. Opsgenie empowers development and operations teams to plan for service disruptions and stay in control during incidents. And control is what you want when things go wrong. Opsgenie gives teams the power to respond quickly and efficiently to unplanned issues, helping notify all the right people through a combination of scheduling and escalation paths that address communications challenges like time zones and holiday issues. Opsgenie allows for deep flexibility in the how, when, and where aspects of alerts being deployed. With over 200 integrations with apps like Jira, Amazon CloudWatch, New Relic, and many more, you can integrate with the apps you're already using, saving valuable time in setup and training. Software has become a part of our daily lives, both business and personal, making things easier, faster, and more accessible. But that means when your service is down, it makes a bigger impact on your customers and on their perception of you. Opsgenie helps you keep those times down to a minimum, alerting you to when they happen so you can respond faster. And in the reliability game, every minute counts. You can get your company a free account and add up to 5 team members right now by visiting Opsgenie.com. You heard me, a free account and up to 5 team members at Opsgenie.com. Find out why, with Opsgenie, you will never miss a critical alert again at Opsgenie.com. Yeah. And I think it's important to be transparent about it and not talk about it.
Right.
Because I think if there's one piece of software that you want updated regularly and monitored, and you don't want to wait for the updates to come out, it's your password manager.
Right. Now, it is still possible to get a standalone license, but it's really hard to find out how to do that. 1Password makes it, really like, gotta go to that certain place and look at the fine print and jump through a bunch of hoops. It's hidden, and it's expensive too. You'll pay $65 per platform, so you can buy a Mac license and use 1Password on all of your Macs for $65. Then, if you also want to use it on Windows, that's going to be another $65. If you want to sync with your iPhone or iPad, you're going to pay $10 for an iOS license. Same thing with Android. So, if you need that, if you're just dead set against a subscription, it is still possible to get a standalone license. But not only are you, ultimately paying more, but you're also not getting certain features that come with the subscription. So there's the ability to share passwords securely with other people. There's the travel mode that can erase all of the passwords off of your device if you're about to, for example, cross an international border and you're worried about your device being confiscated. And there are a bunch of other things that subscriptions give you that just aren't possible with the standalone version. So So I think it's fine. I think it's very good value.
Joe, when we started out, you said that there have been some changes in the last couple of weeks that necessitated more updates to the book.
Yeah.
Do those have to do with bad guys, or do they have to do with Mojave, or anything?
Yeah. So first of all, let me go back a little more than a couple of weeks and mention that in iOS 12, third-party password managers can now do things that used to only be possible for iCloud Keychain. So this is no longer news, but in case anybody hasn't heard about it yet, this is a wonderful, fantastic thing in iOS 12. So you don't have to go through so many hoops to fill. So it used to be, I'm in Safari in iOS 12, and I've got 1Password. My stuff is in there, but I gotta tap the share button, and then I gotta go up into my share sheet and find 1Password. I have to go in there and log in, and search for my password. And it's like this. There's this whole big routine you had to go through if you wanted to fill in a password in Safari that wasn't in iCloud Keychain. Well, now if you just go into settings and there's a certain place you go to enable a third-party password manager, either instead of or in addition to iCloud Keychain, you can now fill in passwords from 1Password or LastPass or Dashlane or RoboForm, or there's a whole bunch of them. But you can now fill those in just as easily as you can passwords for iCloud Keychain. And that's great because 1Password gives you a lot of features that iCloud Keychain doesn't have. In my opinion, it's also more secure. So that's a new and very, very good thing, and I talk about that in the book. There are still certain situations in which you might want to go back to that share sheet extension to do certain things, but for just filling in passwords, this is great. So we do talk about that. But then there's Mojave. Now, I had written a draft of this book. I had tested all the new things, and I wrote what I was experiencing, and then I sent it off to my editor. And she's like, "Now, Joe, this section here isn't matching what I'm seeing." And were you not aware of these changes in Mojave? I'm like, what? Me not aware of? How is what? and it turns out that the Mac on which I was doing my testing was still running High Sierra, and also it was just slightly behind in its updates for 1Password, and so I had not noticed a change. So here's the change. It used to be that you're on a page that has a login form. There's a username field and a password field. And then you press the magic keystroke combination, command backslash, and 1Password fills in your username and password and submits the form. That's the way 1Password has always worked. Now, the submit part was always optional. You could turn that off if you wanted it to just fill in and not actually, virtually click the submit button. But that was the default behavior. There's empty fields, you press the keystroke, it fills in the fields, it submits the form. Now, this is in contrast to the way Safari's built-in autofill feature works and some other password managers work, where the page loads and it automatically fills in your credentials, but it doesn't submit them until you click the button. So, in Mojave, Apple has made some changes to its security model, which I won't say strictly makes it impossible, but strongly discourages, let us say, password managers from virtually clicking that submit button. So that means that it's now you have an extra keystroke. So you're going to press command backslash to fill in your credentials, and then you're going to have to also press return to submit the form. So you have an extra keystroke every time. Now this wasn't necessary in High Sierra, but now it is, because when 1Password made this change, they made it across all versions of macOS. And it's a little bit annoying because it's not just that you have an extra keystroke, but it's an extra keystroke that wouldn't have been necessary with, for example, iCloud Keychain, because with iCloud Keychain, your passwords are filled in automatically, but all you have to do now is click the submit button. So, long story short, there are important security reasons to do this. And there are situations in which, if you were using a password manager that when the page loads, it automatically fills in your credentials and clicks submit, and you don't even see that login form. So those exist. They're a really bad idea because malicious software could just send you to a certain web page, and if your password manager logs you in automatically, it could then do stuff without you even being at your computer. So that's a really, it's handy, but it's a very unsafe kind of model. But as it turns out, there are also security risks to just the autofill and auto submit in one operation. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that we live in times where the bad guys have been so clever in their engineering of malware that that Apple basically has to step in and say, for your own safety, guys, we're going to not make this possible anymore. And so we have an extra keystroke now. It's Command / return. And it's okay. It's not that big of a deal. You get used to it pretty fast. It makes me sad, but it's also not AgileBits' fault. It is the fault of the security world and the bad guys. Now, it could be that in some future version, some different architecture and engineering takes place, and AgileBits figures out a way to keep us just as safe without making us perform so many steps. I already read about somebody who used a keyboard maestro macro to submit a form with 1Password and also click submit at the same time. It's unfortunate, but yet I accept that it is for my own good, and that's something that just happened a couple of weeks ago. So had I updated the book earlier, I couldn't have covered that. So there you go.
This reminds me of a comment that we got in our Facebook group about another product, had nothing to do with 1Password, and there was some discontent, shall we say, with, well, why couldn't the developers just handle this? Why do I have to do this as a user? And it's like, welcome to the world of security. This is where it is. If you want convenience, you can get it. It's just that you can't be secure. If you want security, you can't have convenience. Or at least you have minimal convenience.
Yeah, that's it exactly. I mean, in this book and in a number of other books that I've written, I've talked at great length about the trade-offs between security and convenience. And I mean, all of the developers, whether it's Apple or third parties, they're all doing their level best to walk that line, and it's, sometimes you're going to teeter over onto one side or the other. But it's like, I know people who live in areas that are so remote and have so little crime that they don't even bother locking their doors. This is weird to me because I've always lived in pretty, urban areas, but okay. And like, I get that it's such, I got to remember to lock the door. Now I have to carry a key with me. I can't forget my key. And like, yes, it's an extra effort to keep yourself secure. And I'm sorry that there are thieves out there, but there are, and you do what you got to do. So, you can probably buy locks that are easier to unlock, or, you get a smart lock or whatever. You do something to reduce the inconvenience while keeping yourself secure. But if you're unhappy about the extra security measures, don't direct your ire at the security companies. They're only trying to help. Direct your ire at the bad guys. And it's sad, it's unfortunate, but that's kind of the world we live in.
You're right. It is unfortunate, but you're also right. It is the world we live in, and the sooner you accept some of that, the better off you'll be, because it is the way that it's going to have to be now.
Yeah,
Joe, I know there are plenty of things that we could dance around with the updates to 1Password, and then we could veer off into security in general. But I'm going to tell people to go to takecontrolbooks.com, pick up this new edition. What kind of pricing is there, and how are the upgrades being handled this time?
Right. So it's a $15 book-ish, but because there has been so little time since the previous edition came out, and because the update is late, I'm giving it for free to everybody who has the third edition. So if you already had Take Control of 1Password third edition, you get the fourth edition for free. For everybody else, it's $15. I should mention, by the way, I cover macOS, iOS, Windows, and Android. And even though there have been lots of changes in macOS and iOS, there have been even bigger changes. I mean, gigantic changes on Windows. So if you also use a Windows PC, you will. This is an even more important update for you, because 1Password on Windows has just gotten so much better than before, and my book covers all the new goodness in the Windows version, Android also. So whichever platform you use, in fact, even if you use a Chromebook, you can now access 1Password on that. You can access it on Linux, and the book covers all the above. So it's a really important update, and I hope you'll take advantage of it.
1Password is a really important product. This book is a great way to keep up with what's changing, and there will be another edition at some point as more things change, because that's the one thing that's certain. More things are going to change.
That's right.
Hey, one other thing, though, I want to make sure we touched on. You had mentioned pre-show that you're going to be updating your password manager pick on the Wirecutter, which is one of the places I go the first time to look up anything I'm about to buy. Comments on that?
Yeah. So I have by the time this airs, I will have submitted my updated article. I don't know when it's going to be published. It might be this week. It might be next week. It has to go through the whole process. Last time around, this was prior to the release of version 7 of 1Password. I'm sorry. I'm just like, what is that noise? Oh, someone's printing something. So. Don't mind that sound in the background. So I said that my top pick for most people was LastPass, on the basis that there was a free version that did most of the things that most people need, and then there's also a paid version as well that has more features. And I positioned 1Password as my upgrade pick for Apple users. I said, it is better. It has more bells and whistles. It has more polish. It has all this other kind of stuff. But A, it's a little more expensive. And B, the Windows and Android versions, not to mention the Chromebook version, really, really far behind. And because I can't recommend this as a top pick for everyone, I'm only going to say it's an upgrade pick for Apple users. The situation has changed. So all those great features that were only available for Apple users now are now available for everyone. And so 1Password has gotten better. Meanwhile, I have heard an increasing number of complaints about LastPass. And I don't think that LastPass has literally gotten worse, but it does seem as though the quality control has slipped a bit, and people are starting to notice that things that are pretty easy in 1Password are comparatively more difficult and more annoying in LastPass. So instead of saying LastPass is our top pick and 1Password is the upgrade pick, we're still keeping that relative order, but we're now saying that 1Password is the top pick for everyone, and LastPass is the runner-up. There are also other good password managers out there. Dashlane is also good, and RoboForm is also good, and Keeper is also good, and there are a bunch of others as well. But we think that 1Password is enough improved and at not too much of an additional cost to be our new top pick, and I think a lot of people are going to be really pleased with that decision.
Sounds good. So we will look for that. If the article is published in time, I'll make sure there's a link in the show notes, and if not, I'll add it as soon as I'm aware of it after the fact.
All right. Sounds good.
Joe, thank you. Thank you for sharing all this and explaining a few things and bringing us up to speed.
My pleasure.
I would think we'll be talking between now and the end of the year.
Very likely so.
Very likely. Okay, good. All right. Thanks so much.
All right.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. I am a 1Password user. I'm delighted with the upgrades. I'm delighted with Joe's upgrade because I have an idea there's some features maybe that came out that I missed. So I'm looking forward to finding out what those are and being just that much safer. Until the next time, as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our MacVoices Facebook group, and get more out of your Apple Tech with MacVoices magazine, free on Flipboard. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us at patreon.com/MacVoices and join these folks who help keep MacVoices coming to you. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.